All right. Good afternoon again, Dr. Clark. How you doing?
Good afternoon, sir. Well, thank you.
As you can imagine, I have a few questions for you. Couldn't let you get out of Mississippi without asking you a few. So you talked a lot about your opinion that you rendered in this case with Ms. Todd. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And I just want to ask you a few questions about that opinion. So, as I understand it, you stated that you were retained towards the end of August. Is that correct?
Middle of August, I believe, was my first phone call with Attorney Camp.
Okay. Does it sound about right that you were retained around August 24th?
It's quite possible, yes.
Okay. And then 5 days later, on August 29th, you evaluated, you flew down here and you evaluated Ms. Gregg here, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then 4 days later, on September 3rd, you rendered what was ultimately your report in this case, right? Your opinion.
Correct.
All right. And Doctor, whenever you're retained on a case, and how many times did you say you testified as an expert witness?
I think I said over 150.
Okay. So, but you said this is the first time that you've testified in Mississippi, correct?
Correct.
All right. Whenever you're retained on a case, what do you do to familiarize yourself with what the standard is that you're going to be testifying about in whatever state it is you're retained?
What I usually do is, do an internet search and try to find either the statute or the case law or whatever is relevant.
Right.
And I'll also talk to the attorney about what they feel the legal requirements are.
Did you have a conversation like that with Mr. Camp?
I did.
Okay. Did he provide you with what the legal standard was in Mississippi?
He did, yes.
Okay. And I believe that whenever we talked the other day, you told me that you looked up the statute in Mississippi. Is that correct?
Yeah, I told you I was wrong, but I told you that, yes.
Okay. Okay. Because in fact, there's no statute, is there?
I don't believe there is. So I looked up the standard, but they're not the statute.
Right. Right. Now, you've obviously talked about it. You evaluated Carly back here, right?
Yes.
And approximately how long did that evaluation take?
About 4 hours.
Okay. And you stated that Ms. Todd was present during that evaluation, right?
Correct.
All right. And that's the same Ms. Todd that's present with Ms. Gregg here today, correct?
Correct.
All right. And that's the only time you've evaluated Carly ever?
Yes.
All right. You never treated Carly before August 29th of 2024?
No.
All right. You've never reviewed any of her records until presumably you received them sometime after August 24th, correct?
I think that's correct. The records, I may have gotten records a few days before then,
Okay.
But that's generally correct, yes.
All right. Dr. Clark, whenever you evaluated the defendant, Ms. Gregg here, did she know who she was herself?
Yes.
All right. Did she appear to be dissociating the day that you evaluated her?
She didn't appear that way. She reported that she was to some extent, but not that I could tell.
Okay. So what exactly did she report, or who did she report to that she was dissociating that day?
Well, she told me that in a somewhat chronic way, she'd been feeling this sense of being separate from the world, and that things were sort of dreamlike still. It didn't happen all the time, but it happened when she was having evaluations or when she would go to court, more than other times.
But the fact that she was dissociating based off her own terms, whenever you evaluated her, that didn't affect your opinion as to the things she told you, did it?
No, it did not.
Okay. Did she know at the time that you evaluated her why she was there being evaluated?
I believe so, yes.
All right. Did she know why or in what role that you were there?
I believe so, yes.
Did you talk to her about that?
I did. I explained who I was at the outset.
And you actually told her that you're there, and I believe in your report, Stacey, that you're actually there on behalf of her attorneys, correct?
Correct.
The attorneys who were representing her in her murder trial, right?
Well, I told her that I was there. I'd been retained by the attorneys to do an evaluation that the attorneys might choose to use, and they might choose to have me testify as well.
Right. You also stated that you conducted a Zoom interview with Ms. Gregg's stepdad, Mr. Heath Smiley, on August 31st, 2024. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that lasted about 90 minutes, right?
Yes.
But neither the evaluation that you conducted with Ms. Gregg nor the evaluation for 90 minutes that you conducted with Mr. Smiley, you didn't video record or any other way record those, did you?
Well, I only took notes, but I did not record them in any other way.
Okay. Did you ever provide those notes to Mr. Camp or Ms. Todd?
I have not provided them, I have not been asked for them, nor have I provided them.
Great, thank you. So in forming your opinion in this case, you relied basically on your memory from when you evaluated Ms. Gregg, along with the notes that you took as it relates to the evaluation, right?
Yes,
And then the other documents and things that you looked at as well, that you already testified about.
that's correct, yes.
Right. You talk about in your report some of the documents and things that you reviewed. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And I see some counseling records from when Carly was younger. Did you review those?
I did.
All right. I see some what appear to be, I guess, medical records from, I guess, her pediatrician. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. And then you go on down there and you say that you review some home videos. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe that's number 9 on your report. Which videos did you review?
There were 2 videos that I reviewed. One was a video from the kitchen around 4:10 p.m. on Tuesday, March 19th.
Okay.
And the second was a video that was taken, I believe, from the garage that occurred at the time of the shooting of Mr. Heath Smiley.
Were you provided or did you review the videos from when Miss Gregg and Miss Smiley came home from school? Was that depicted on the videos that you watched?
It was not depicted on the videos that I watched. I'm not sure whether it may have been provided to me, but I did not see it.
Okay. So was the only video that you saw from inside the house the video where you can actually hear the shooting?
Yes.
And then how long after that in the video sequence did you watch?
I watched for several minutes before then and for several minutes after then.
Okay.
But to my best of my estimate, it was no more than 20 minutes total and probably somewhat less.
Okay. And then you also mentioned some sheriff office reports. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And you say that you reviewed some police reports regarding texts sent by Carly on 3/19/24. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you ever actually see the actual text messages, the printout of the text, or were you just relying on the police officer's reports?
I never actually saw the printout of the texts.
Okay.
So I had to rely on just the police officer's report.
Okay. And would it be helpful in rendering opinion to have the actual text where you can look at kind of the context and how they were texting back and forth? Would that be helpful?
I think it likely would have been helpful, yes.
Okay. And these friends that it's talking about that Miss Gregg was texting back and forth with, did you reach out to any of these friends to interview them?
I did interview one of them, yes.
Okay, and who was that?
That was a juvenile called BG.
Okay, all right. And what did your interview? Did you rely on that interview with BG?
No,
Okay. Did you actually talk to BG?
I did.
You did. Okay. What did BG tell you?
What BG told me was that he was good friends with Carly, that they had been friends for at least a few years, that she was very bright and that she tended to hang out with the academically successful kids, and he wasn't necessarily one of those. He told me that she was outgoing and bubbly and friendly, and had good energy. He told me that somewhere around February of this year that they began to text or communicate somewhat less with one another. He wasn't quite sure why. He told me that he became aware around early March that she was smoking marijuana, and that he was concerned about it and talked to her about it. And he told me that he had decided to tell Carly's mother about that, and in fact did so on the afternoon of Tuesday, March 19th.
Right. Did he also tell you that Miss Gregg reached out to him and asked him to come over after she shot and killed her mom?
He did. He told me that she had FaceTimed him and that she had asked him to come over, and that he asked for the address, and that he was actually heading over, but I think at that point it was too late.
Okay. Did he say anything about whether or not Carly told him why she was asking him to come over?
He did not say that.
Okay.
He did not say that.
But Carly knew and recognized him at the time, correct?
I think it's a reasonable supposition, yes.
And she reached out to him between whenever she shot and killed her mom and whenever she shot her dad, correct, or her stepdad.
I believe so, yes.
In your report, Dr. Clark, you talk about present circumstances. Do you recall that? I think it's down at the bottom of page 2. Do you recall writing that section in your report?
I do.
All right. And in there, what are you talking about present circumstances? Is that like as we sit here today?
I was talking about how Carly was doing, how she reported how she was doing at the time of my interview with her on August 29th.
Right. And you state that she chooses not to meet with mental health, both because it requires submitting a request and because she does not find it helpful, correct?
Correct.
And that's what she told you.
Yes.
All right. You go on to say in the beginning of the next paragraph that she's cried a lot as the reality began to sink in. Do you say that? Do you see where she told you that?
I do.
All right. And the reality that she's talking about is the fact that she killed her mom, correct?
I think it's probably, that's certainly a piece of, well, no, actually, I take it, no, I don't know that that's correct. I think that the reality, that my understanding that she was referring to was that her mother was dead and that she was incarcerated.
Okay.
I don't know to what extent she believed or knew that she had actually killed her mother and to what extent that meant something to her. I just don't know because she didn't say that.
Right. And you talked about it on your direct with Ms. Todd, and you sat in here with Deputy Shack this morning and you watched the video, correct?
Correct.
And you heard her say whenever they asked her which hand did she shoot with, and she identified her right hand, correct?
I didn't hear that piece. I testified with Attorney Todd. I didn't actually catch that one piece.
That is what you said on direct. And you also heard Deputy Shack say that she was asking about her stepdad, correct?
Correct.
And that she apologized to Deputy Shack. She said, "I'm sorry," right?
Yes.
Okay. But it's still your opinion that you don't think that she knows that she killed her mom.
Do you mean at that point in time, or do you mean right now, as we sit here today?
Well, at that point in time, do you think she knew she killed her mom?
I think that I don't know what she knew at that point in time.
And that's because we can't get inside people's head, correct?
I do my best, but
right, I understand. But in general, we can't get inside someone's head and see exactly what they're thinking, can we?
No.
We can only look at what they tell us. Is that right?
Not only that, other things as well.
Their actions.
Their actions, their demeanor, their mannerisms, what other people tell us, the records that we can review. Right. Sometimes we can do brain scans and psychological testing, not in this case, but we don't know for sure.
Right. Thank you. Now, you go on in your report and you talk about early history. And I assume that you're talking about prior to age 9, because then you have a separate section where you're talking about ages 9 to 14, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And down at the bottom of page 3, I think it's the next to the last paragraph down there, you state in general, and again, this was prior to age 9, according to what you just said. In general, she did not. She was going to therapy at a young age, correct?
Correct.
All right. But in general, she did not find it helpful. Again, we see that, so that's kind of been a common theme, right? She didn't find therapy helpful back here, and she didn't find it helpful whenever she was younger, correct?
Correct.
All right. She didn't like or trust some of the therapists, and she found that some seemed to be simply trying to get information to be used against her father. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what she told you.
Yes.
And you mentioned her father a couple times earlier, and you said that maybe you reviewed some records or something that he had bipolar. Did you ever reach out to Mr. Gregg?
I did not.
Okay, you never talked to Mr. Gregg?
No.
So other than a couple pages off of a medical record, did you ever see any medical record where he was diagnosed with bipolar?
I did.
You did?
I saw Dr. Hardy's record,
Right.
I think on 2 occasions where he was diagnosed and treated for bipolar disorder.
And you're aware that was just, he was sent there due to some court order or something in their chancery case?
I'm actually not sure why he while he was there.
Okay. And then if you turn the page in your report over there to the top of page 4, and we're still talking about prior to age 9, in the first full paragraph, about midway down, she said, Carly says she tried to act happy in front of others, although she was aware that she was putting on a show. And you talked about that earlier, isn't that correct?
I did.
That she's good at putting on a show.
Yes, she's good at putting a good face forward in spite of whatever difficulties she may be having.
Right. And I just want to be clear, Doctor. So, kind of, we'll jump forward just a little bit, just to, as we talk about this, we kind of have a mutual understanding. So, your opinion ultimately is that from the time that she got home and she took out the dogs, that she blacked out at that point, correct?
Yes.
And that she doesn't come to until the police pick her up, correct?
Correct.
But she remembers everything else that day.
Yes.
She remembers waking up and being irritable that morning.
Yes.
But that one hour or so period, an hour and a half period, that's the period that she doesn't remember.
Correct.
And depending on which side you sit over here, that could be fairly convenient, right?
Yes. Yes, it certainly could.
Seems like a convenient time period, doesn't it?
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about accurate information. Is it important in your evaluation to receive accurate information?
Yes.
All right. Is it important to receive complete information?
As much as possible, yes. It's never completely complete, but yes.
Right. And I believe you stated that all of the documents that you received in this trial, or in this case, that you only received those documents from Mr. Camp or someone on the defense side. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So the only documents that you were able to review were the documents that they sent you.
Correct. No one else sent me documents.
Right. And then your other, the other things that you relied on was your interview with Miss Gregg, correct?
Yes.
And your interview with her stepdad, correct?
Yes. And as I testified, my training, education, experience, and
I got you.
knowledge of the literature.
If you don't have proper facts, can you render a proper opinion?
No.
Isn't it true that, and you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, isn't it true that someone can fake a mental illness or insanity?
Yes.
Is it true that someone in Carly's position who's been charged with a crime such as murder might have a motive to try to fake insanity or a mental illness?
Yes.
All right. So I want to keep moving forward in your report a little bit, where the next section you go down to ages 9 through 14. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we're talking age 9 until the age up until when this event happened earlier this year in March, correct?
Actually, there's a subsequent section that starts January of 2024.
Gotcha.
So I'm talking about age 9 up through December of 2023.
Gotcha, thank you. And the top of page 5 there, you talk about that there were 2 incidents of Carly getting in trouble prior to January of 2024. And you mentioned that one time is when she snuck out of the house, and another time is whenever she shared some test answers with the entire class. So those the 2 incidents that you were aware of her getting in trouble.
Yes, I think I had already referred to the knife in school incident at some
Okay.
other point in time.
Okay. Do you know where that is in your report?
Oof. As I sit here, I don't know.
I think actually, I don't have it right here in front of me either, but I think actually on direct exam with Ms. Todd, you stated that she told the school, well, first of all, did you review any records from the school?
No.
Okay. I didn't think so because I didn't see those listed here, but you told Ms. Todd that she supposedly took that to school because a friend either asked her or told her to, correct?
That's what she had told me, yes.
Okay. I think in your report you actually say that it was left in some pants from hunting or something along those lines. Is that correct?
No.
That's not okay.
No.
All right. Do you again? We'll keep going through and we'll find it here in a second. All All right. Are you aware that whenever she was confronted by the school for bringing the knife to school, she originally told them that she brought it because somebody asked her or told her to? Is that what she told you?
No. She told me that's the reason why she did not talk to me about what she had said originally to the school.
Okay. So she originally told the school that she brought it because somebody told her.
Sure.
All right, Dr. Clark, sorry about that. I handed you a document that's already been produced in evidence as D15, and I'll give you a second to read that if you would like.
Okay, I've read it.
Okay, and when Carly was first asked, and this is by the assistant principal at Northwest Rankin Middle School, when she was first asked why she brought the knife to school.
Objection, Your Honor.
What basis?
Hearsay.
Whenever she first was asked why she brought the knife to school, Your Honor, Mr. Clark, Dr. Clark, she said it was for her protection, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then she was talking about a high school student who was supposedly threatening her, correct?
I don't see that in there. I think she said that she needed to protect herself from high school students.
Okay. Then the last paragraph there says, meeting with Carly's mother occurred that day. She was notified that she would have to follow protocol. And that's the next Bates stamp number document in that.
These both have Bates stamps of 475.
Okay. And down there on the bottom of that 475, you see that indeed Carly changed her story, didn't she?
Yes.
And she stated that the first reason that she said for protection just seemed more logical, correct?
Correct.
Right. So in essence, she lied.
Yes.
And back in your report, we were talking about the two things, and you stated that she snuck out of the house and that she shared test answers. And then you said you'd already mentioned the knife, correct?
Correct.
And did she tell you that she was operating on a burner phone, texting other people, correct?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. So in December of 2023, and then later in the winter of 2024, she told me she was using either an old iPad or a burner phone.
Right. Now, proceeding down in your report there, you talk about, you say that Carly was asked about her mood for the last 5 years, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so that's up from, when is that time period covering, that 5 years?
I think age 9 to 14.
Okay.
Something like that.
All right. And you listed some stuff there that you said that she was doing that were kind of out of characteristics for Carly. You said that she got a piercing, she got a tattoo, correct?
Yes.
And that was also at school?
Yes.
But then in the bottom of that paragraph, you state that she told you she never became paranoid or lost touch with reality, correct?
Correct.
So at least until January of 2024, she had never lost touch with reality, correct?
I think that's fair to say, yes.
Okay. And if you continue coming down there in the next paragraph, you see where she talks about that she started or that she reported experiencing a voice in her head for as long as she can remember. Is that what she told you?
It is, yes.
Okay. And she told you basically that it was simply telling her elitist things. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Stuff such as, you're better than them.
Correct.
But at that time, it was certainly not telling her any, I guess what you would call auditory or command hallucinations, correct?
Yes, I mean, it does qualify as an auditory hallucination,
Right.
but not a command hallucination.
Exactly. Thank you. So, and the first time that she ever reported any command hallucinations was whenever she was actually already in the jail back here, correct? Or after she had been arrested.
I think that's true. I don't know the specifics of what she reported to her friend SK before the incident. I just don't know.
Right.
But as far as I know, in the jail was the first time, yes.
But she certainly never reported any command hallucinations to any healthcare providers that she was seeing, correct?
That's correct.
And that kind of takes us up to January of 2024, whenever Miss Smiley Ashley, her mom, started taking her to see a couple of different therapists and nurse practitioners, correct?
Yes, I think one therapist and one nurse practitioner.
Right.
Yes.
Doctor, you also talk about at the top of page 6 in your report, it says that, and again, this is between the ages of 9 to 14, so up at least until July of 2024, Carly denied ever losing large chunks of memory and denied others suggesting that her behavior had been unusual in ways she could not recall. So at least up until January 2024, she had never lost any large chunks of memory, correct?
That's correct. She reported that she had not.
And again, all this is just based off of what she told you.
That is based on what she told me, yes.
After she's been charged with murder, correct?
Yes.
And that leads us up to the kind of subsections you have here where you talk about January to March of 2024, right?
Correct.
And that's kind of the time period that you focused on in your report, because that's whenever she begins getting prescribed Zoloft, correct?
Correct.
And she's going to see some different therapists and things like that, or going to see a therapist.
Correct.
And you talk about the fact that Carly's mom found out that she had a burner phone or an iPod Touch, right?
Yes.
And you put in there that her mom accused her of living a double life, in quotes. And I assume that that's in quotes because I assume that's what Ms. Gregg told you, was that that her mom thought she was living a double life, right?
Correct.
And at that point, Ms. Gregg thought it was necessary, or Ms. Smiley thought it was necessary to get Carly into therapy and to get her some kind of medical treatment, right?
I mean, I think fair to say that she thought it was a good idea and
Right.
called for.
And there at the bottom of your report, you say that Carly liked her therapist a lot and found it helpful to speak with her. She reported that she was forthcoming with the clinicians who prescribed the medication, correct?
Correct.
And that's what Carly told you,
It is.
that she was forthcoming, told them everything, right?
Yep.
Did you review the notes from Carly's therapist, Ms. Rebecca Kirk?
I did.
All right, is that Magnolia Counseling?
Yes.
And then you would agree with me, wouldn't you, that not one single time in her therapy notes with Ms. Kirk does she ever report to Ms. Kirk that she dissociated or heard any voices, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, she answered a questionnaire from Ms. Kirk's office where she stated she did not hear voices, right?
I actually think the questionnaire was from Precise Clinical.
You're right.
But indeed she answered that she did not hear voices.
Right. And that was a document that we looked at earlier, D19, with Ms. Todd. Do you recall that?
I do.
And she had you go through and do you still have that document in front of you?
Oh, I'm actually not sure. I think I have it here. Yeah, yes.
And she had you read through several questions. If you'll turn to page stamp 763, question number 21 states that, have you ever heard things other people couldn't hear, such as voices? And Carly states no. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. And this is the therapist that she was seeing up until actually the day before March 19th, right?
This is the nurse practitioner.
You're right. You're right.
That she had seen, I think, 1 week before the incident.
Yes. But even the day before, whenever she saw her therapist, Ms. Kirk, she didn't report to her that she was hearing any voices, did she?
She did not.
Right. And I want to talk to you about, you talked about the event that happened on Sunday, March 17th, so basically 2 days before, right?
Yes.
And I think that is at the top of page 8 of your report, is that right?
Yes.
All right. And you also talked about a journal entry that Carly wrote, is that correct?
Yes.
And she said some things in there about either feeling like she was schizophrenic or something along that line, right?
So there had been that journal entry from, I think, April of 2023.
Okay.
But I'd also talked about a journal entry that she had made on March 12th, 2024.
Okay. That was on March 12th?
She made a journal entry that day, yes.
Okay. And then you talk about an event that she had at the top of your report on the Sunday before, is that right?
Yes.
And that's the one where she says she actually smoked some marijuana and then she had this event, right?
Yes.
So she would do she voluntarily intoxicated, right?
She was.
Right. Because she smoked the marijuana.
Yes.
Do you know whether recreational marijuana is legal in Mississippi or not?
I actually don't know.
Okay. We just got medical marijuana last year, so it's not. And she states that she felt in a way that she had never felt before in that event on March 17th, right?
Yes.
And that was after she smoked marijuana.
Yes.
And I just want to be clear, doctor. So we've talked about nurse practitioner. We might not have, but we've talked about precise neuroscience, right?
Yes.
And that's the nurse practitioner that she was going to see.
Correct.
And that her name is Miss Olivia Lieber, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then we've got her therapist over here. So she went to see nurse practitioner Lieber, and then nurse practitioner Lieber referred her to therapy, and that's Miss Rebecca Kirk, right?
Correct.
And she stated she liked Miss Kirk.
Yes.
All right. And she was forthcoming with her.
Yes.
And then you agree with me that she never told either Miss Kirk or nurse practitioner Lieber that she ever heard any voices.
I would agree with that, yes.
All right. And from January the 22nd of 2004 all the way up until the day before this event happened, she was seeing Miss Kirk basically every week, right?
Yes.
Sometimes twice a week.
Yes, I think that's right.
Right. And she never said anything to her about voices.
Correct.
She never said anything to her about dissociating.
Correct.
Did she ever say anything to nurse practitioner Lieber about that she was zoning out?
I don't believe so, no.
And correct me if I'm wrong, who did you get that information from that she was zoning out, or that she had ever told anyone she was zoning out? Where did that come from in your report? Did Mr. Smiley tell you that she would zone out from time to time?
Mr. Smiley did tell me that, yes.
All right, her stepdad, correct?
Her stepdad, yes.
On page 7 of your report, you talk about that the primary source of Carly's anxiety was her will to want to please her mother, correct?
That's what she told me, yes.
So her main source of anxiety is basically an overprotecting mother who wants her to do well, right?
I'm not sure I'd say overprotective, although I think Carly probably would.
Right.
In fact.
And Carly's obviously worried about pleasing her.
Yes.
And specifically, what was Carly worried about? Her mom finding out.
I think that it was important for Carly that she do well in school, that she really excel, because she thought her mother would be proud of her for that. And then later, of course, and then she was cutting, as I understand it, for about 2 years before the incident. So I'm sure that I think it's reasonable to think that she was worried that her mother would find out about the cutting. She was using this iPod Touch in the fall of 2023, and then later a burner phone in 2024. And then, of course, she was smoking marijuana in March and February of 2024. So those were all things that she would reasonably have worried that her mother would find out about and be upset.
In other words, that Ashley was going to find out that she was leading a double life, right?
I wouldn't use that phrase. I know that Carly said that her mother had used that phrase. I wouldn't use it. I don't think that's an accurate portrayal.
Well, Carly was worried that she was going to find out that she was leading a double life, right?
No, Carly told me that her mother had used that phrase with her.
Right. And when did Carly say that she started smoking marijuana?
Carly told me, I think she told me around February of 2024.
And I think earlier you said maybe that that Carly had told you 2 to 3 times a week. I think in your report you say 3 to 4 times a week, right?
Oh, it's possible. I think I testified either 2 to 3, or I had also seen 3 to 4 somewhere in there.
And she did that all the way up until at least the day before this happened, correct?
Correct.
So all the way up until March 18th of 2024.
Yes.
Now, we've heard testimony about some of the medications that Carly was on, and I'm talking about specifically between January and March of 2024. Specifically, we've heard Lexapro and Zoloft, right?
Yes.
All right. Do you have any proof that Carly actually ever took those medications other than what Carly told you?
No.
Okay, so you don't know whether she actually took them or not, do you?
I don't know for sure. Of course, I don't know anything for sure.
Right.
But what I know is that the medications were filled, and Carly reported to me that she took them regularly, and I imagine she reported to the nurse practitioner that she was taking them.
Okay, and you have no proof that she actually took them as they were prescribed, right?
I have no absolute proof of that or.
And in fact, she didn't take them as prescribed, because whenever she was being weaned off of the Zoloft, she just said she quit cold turkey, as you testified earlier, right?
I did testify that she stopped the Zoloft abruptly on March 12th rather than follow what was the recommendation of going down to 25 milligrams.
Right, but you said that she had no withdrawal symptoms from that, correct?
That's what she told me, yes.
Right. Now, again, when did Carly begin taking Lexapro?
She began taking Lexapro on it was prescribed on March 12th, 2024. It was picked up on March 12th, 2024. I don't know whether she took it that day or the following day.
Okay, and so your opinion is based off the fact that she either started taking the Lexapro on either March 12th or March 13th, right?
Yes, that's one of the bases of my opinion. Yes.
Okay, but again, you don't know which day she started taking it on.
I don't.
All right, and hypothetically speaking, if she told someone that she did not start taking it until March 18th, would that affect your opinion here today?
Not substantially.
Okay. And you said that she was prescribed basically 5 milligrams, right?
Yes.
And that's essentially half of what the recommended dosage is for a pediatric patient, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a range of recommended dosages, but I'll say it's a low dose.
So the general dose is typically 10, is that right?
Typically 10.
Okay. And of course 5 would be half of that, right?
Yes.
But even still, after taking that, at least as of the day before, whenever Carly saw Miss Kirk, she didn't say anything about any voices that she was hearing, right? To therapist Kirk.
That's correct.
They weren't commanding her to do anything, right?
Well, I'm not saying that. She didn't tell Miss Kirk about it.
Right. She didn't tell Miss Kirk, and the first time she ever said anything to anybody about it was after she was already detained, correct?
Although we heard SK testify this morning that she had told her before the incident.
Okay, her friend that she still stays in contact with today, right?
SK is a friend that she still stays in contact with, yes.
Right. And I think in your report, as of 2 days before, that you say that that what she told you or the voices would simply just still tell her elitist things, right?
Yes.
And that's what she told you, right?
That's what she told me, yes.
Isn't it a little bit inconsistent what she was telling her practitioners and her healthcare providers before she was arrested, and then what she was told them after she was arrested? Isn't that inconsistent?
It is inconsistent.
Right.
Yes.
You go on to say that even after she started the Lexapro, that she did not demonstrate poor judgment or impulsivity, urges for suicide or aggression, and she was still able to focus on her schoolwork. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And supposedly this is the week leading up to March 19th, 2024, right?
Correct.
And all that, you're assuming that she took the medication as it was prescribed.
Yes.
But you can't confirm that, correct?
I can't prove it.
And I think you actually asked Carly about whether she took the medication as prescribed, right?
I did.
And she told you that she was generally adhering, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I used that. I think even more strongly than that. Carly told me, as I recall, that she was quite adherent with medication. I could be wrong. Page 10, third line down, I did say, and I think she then told me that she was generally adherent with what was prescribed.
Thank you. All right. And again, as to page 8, looking at page 8 on your report, you're talking about the day of March 19th, right?
Yes.
All right. And you said she remembered waking up, correct? She told you she remembered waking up that day.
Yes.
And she said she was irritable. She didn't sleep much, right?
Correct.
And she remembers after school going to her mother's classroom, right?
Yes.
And she said that her mom actually was clearly upset, right?
Yes.
And at some point, Miss Smiley asked her if she was doing drugs, and she searched Carly's bag, right?
Yes.
And this was either at school or sometime between when they left school and got home, right?
Yes.
Miss Smiley asked her if she was lying or hiding anything, right?
Yes.
And like you said earlier, Carly told you that it seemed like that her mom had a sixth sense, right?
Yes.
But now we know that out of concern for their friend, some of her friends devised a plan to go talk to Miss Smiley and tell her basically that they were concerned for Carly because she was smoking weed and had a burner phone, right?
Correct.
And you said you watched the video from inside the house. And so whenever you see Miss Smiley and Carly get home, you can see Miss Smiley go directly to Carly's room and start searching. Is that right? Or, well, you don't see what she's doing, but you see her go directly into the direction of Carly's room.
I believe so, yes.
And then Carly kind of goes, listens to her mom to see what she's doing, and then Carly at some point takes the dogs out, right?
Yes.
And then that's whenever Carly supposedly blacks out.
Correct.
And then comes back to right whenever the deputy picks her up, correct?
That's what she reported, yes.
All right. And then I believe you say in your report there that she had an awareness that she had done something wrong because she found herself in a sewer, right?
Yes.
All right. Why would she have an awareness that she did something wrong if she doesn't remember what she just did?
I don't know the answer. I know this is what she told me.
Right.
And what I took from that was that at that point she did have some awareness, because there's no particular logical connection between coming out of a storm drain and then having actually done something wrong.
Right. And the officer, and you saw the video this morning, the officer, or you saw his testimony, and he stated that he asked her if she was the girl that shot or was involved in the incident, and she said yes, right?
Yes.
And she said because it seemed like it was the logical thing to do, right?
That's what she told me, yes.
Which is the same thing that she told the people at the school whenever she brought the knife to school, right? That it seemed like the logical thing to do, or it seemed like the logical thing to say.
She did say that, yes.
Would it also be logical to say, I have no idea what you're talking about, to the officer?
That could be logical as well.
Well, if he asks you if an officer stops you and asks you if you just shot someone and you have no recollection of it, wouldn't it be logical to say, I have no idea what you're talking about?
It would.
Not to say that yes, because I just thought it was logical, right?
Correct.
And you described Carly right after being arrested or detained. She stated that her mind was shut off, right?
Yes.
But she said she was aware of everything that was happening, correct?
She did, yes.
All right, and so that's after the officer picks her up.
Yes.
Now, you also talk about in your report after March 19th, you state that Carly reports hearing gunshots in her dreams and feels terrified and paranoid, correct?
Yes.
Did she say why she heard gunshots in her dream?
No.
That she just said she heard gunshots in her dream, right?
She said there were times that she has, I think she used the word nightmares, but that she heard gunshots and they were scary for her. No, actually, she did not use the word nightmares as I look at my report, but she said in her dreams, and she felt terrified and paranoid.
And those are the gunshots that she remembers from when she killed her mom?
I think that's a reasonable presumption. She didn't say that specifically.
Right. But she supposedly doesn't remember killing her mom, right?
Correct.
Now I want to talk about, you talked about a couple of the, I guess, diagnoses or opinions that you rendered, and I think kind of one of the first ones where you talked about bipolar 2, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you talked about the DSM, correct? Remind us what that is.
The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th edition, the DSM-5, which is the compilation of all the official psychiatric diagnoses.
And you're familiar with that document, obviously, because you've been doing it for a long time, right?
Yes.
All right. And so, and you talked about hypomania, right?
Yes.
And is bipolar and 2 and hypomania, are those terms kind of used interchangeably, or is one different from the other?
One is a little bit different. Bipolar 2 is the medical condition, or it's a psychiatric condition where a person has either depression or hypomania. So hypomania is a component of the bipolar 2 illness.
Right. And you, I believe you have diagnosed or evaluated, your opinion is that at some point during this time period between March 12th and March 19th that Carly was suffering from hypomania. Is that correct?
I think, I actually have not testified to that, but I think I would likely refer to it as a mixed state.
Okay.
You can have a mixture, actually, of elevated mood and depressed mood, and you can have mood swings that go on as well. I think of it sometimes as stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time, because it wasn't clear to me that Carly was purely hypomanic in that time.
Okay, and I'm just gonna read just here real briefly from the DSM as far as the criteria for bipolar 2. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, and the DSM states that a hypomanic episode is defined as a distinct period of persistently elevated or irritable mood with increased activity or energy lasting for at least 4 consecutive days. Is that correct?
Yes.
At any point in your evaluation, were you able to identify a consecutive 4-day period where Carly was in an elevated or irritable mood?
So Carly reported to me that she was in an elevated or irritable mood for up to 7 days at a time. I don't have the specific dates. I didn't ask her for it. I'm not sure she has it, but I don't have the specific dates on the calendar for it.
Right.
But that's what she reported.
But that's what she reported to you. And was it in a persistently elevated mood, or was it up and down like you just testified?
She reported persistently elevated mood. Looking back over the preceding 5 years, what she reported to me was that she had these periods, persistently elevated mood, where she was more active. Her thought, she was more irritable. She was more impatient. She was more impulsive. She did some more impulsive things. She could be more tactless. She could be more rude. She was more restless.
Right. But at least as it relates to between January and whenever this event happened in March of 2024, certainly no healthcare provider diagnosed her with bipolar 2, correct?
That's correct.
And they were seeing her on a regular basis, correct?
They were, yes.
Her therapist sometimes as much as twice a week, right?
Yes.
And I believe she was seeing nurse practitioner Lieber at least once a month, right?
That's right.
She saw her in January, and then she saw her in February, and then she saw her in March, right?
Correct.
And none of those healthcare providers identified a consecutive 4-day period where she was in a hypomanic or elevated state, right?
They did not.
Okay. But after talking to Carly, now she's told you that she was in an elevated or hypomanic state, right?
Yes.
And that's 6 months after she's been charged with murder, right?
Yes.
All right. You talked about some of your, I guess, alternative hypothesis, correct?
Yes.
And one of those was that she just simply panicked, and out of fear, I guess, of her mom discovering her burner phone and her marijuana or her vapes, that she basically cold-blooded murdered her mom, right?
I'm not sure I would agree with that phrase, cold-blooded.
Well, she panicked and she killed her mom.
She panicked and she killed him. Yes, that was a hypothesis or possibility that I considered, yes.
Okay, so that's one thing that certainly could have happened, right?
Yes.
All right. And the second thing that you hypothesized was that she was simply a psychopath and callous and she killed her mom, right?
Yes.
All right. But they could certainly both apply to Ms. Gregg, right? I know your opinion is that they don't, but they certainly could, right?
They could potentially, yes.
Yeah. Now, I guess your opinion here as we sit here today is that on March 19th, whenever Carly shot her mom, that she did not, in your word, appreciate the difference between right and wrong, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you watched the videos from the house, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it your opinion that she didn't appreciate the difference between right and wrong whenever she hid the gun behind her back?
It's my opinion that in general at that period of time that she fundamentally didn't appreciate the difference between right and wrong, although I will also acknowledge that she acted in ways like that would seem to indicate that she had some appreciation.
Okay. So I guess, again, I would just simply ask, is it your opinion that she did not appreciate the difference between right and wrong when she hid the gun behind her back?
It is my opinion that she did not appreciate the difference between right and wrong at that time or at any point in time in that period. Okay.
And in that video, when she peeks around the kitchen wall after going to retrieve the gun, I assume it's your opinion that she didn't appreciate the difference between right and wrong at that time too, correct?
That is my opinion, yes.
Okay. Whenever she removed the camera from the wall and hid it in the fridge, it's your opinion that she didn't appreciate the difference between right and wrong.
Correct.
When she called and texted multiple friends, but obviously knew that she couldn't tell them what was wrong over the phone, then I assume that you also don't believe she knew the difference between right and wrong at that time.
I don't know whether it was obvious that she felt like she could not tell them what she had done. I don't know why she didn't tell them.
Well, she certainly told them she couldn't tell them, didn't she?
I think that's right.
Right. And did you ever talk or see any talk to or see any text messages from a gentleman named Thad Gilbert?
I don't remember. I've seen something about him, but as I sit here, I don't remember. I don't think I've seen those text messages.
Okay, so sitting here as an expert today, that you've been introduced as an expert and admitted as an expert. If she were to have testified, one of her friends, TG, and told him that she fucked up, excuse my language, but that's his words. If she told him that, then would it be your opinion that she didn't know the difference between right and wrong at that time?
It would.
All right. What if she told TG that he volunteered to call 911? She said, "No, you can't do that." I assume she still didn't know the difference between right and wrong, right?
Yep. Yes.
When her friend BG that you talked to or that you talked about earlier, whenever BG told her not to harm herself or anyone else, and she said it's too late, I assume didn't know the difference between right and wrong.
Correct.
When she told her friend that you invited over, BW, that she put 3 in her mom and that her stepdad would be home shortly and she had 3 more to take care of him, still didn't know the difference between right and wrong.
Correct.
And when she ran from the house after it was all done, she didn't know the difference between right and wrong.
Correct.
But I guess, in your opinion, a lot of it goes back to the switch in medication, correct?
I think that's only a piece of it. I think there's much more than that. I think the psychosis, I think the mood swings and mood disorder had been present before then. The psychosis was clearly getting worse by March 12th before the Lexapro was switched. The dissociation had been ongoing. So I think there was a lot else even before the Lexapro was begun, and then I think the Lexapro was made things worse.
Right. But to be clear, you cannot tie her actions, and I believe you stated in your report, you cannot tie her actions on March 19th to the switch in medication, correct?
I think the switch in medication had an impact. I think it clearly had an impact. I cannot say Lexapro made her do this.
Right. In fact, you state, in Carly's case, in my opinion, the Lexapro that she began taking clearly worsened her pre-existing psychiatric disorders, leaving her in a highly precarious state, but there is inadequate information available to attribute a direct causality to that medication, correct?
That's correct.
So you cannot attribute, as you sit here, a direct causality between the Lexapro and what happened on March 19th, correct?
Well, I think there's some causality there. I think it made her mood problem worse. I think it made the situation worse. I cannot say that Lexapro made her do it.
Right, because you have inadequate information as you stated in your report, right?
Correct.
I want to ask you just a second about dissociation, Dr. Clark. And I believe that you stated earlier that dissociation is typically more what you would see as a protective mechanism. Is that correct?
Well, that's one theory for how it begins. That when a person develops trauma, that they use it, they will dissociate as a way of protecting their sort of psychological well-being. That's one
Right.
theory.
And I've also prosecuted other type of crimes, and I know sometimes with like sex offenses that some of the victims will say that they felt like they kind of left their body and that they were maybe over their body like looking down on. Is that correct? That'd be a type of dissociation.
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you stated earlier that in that model that it's typically the victim who is having the dissociation, correct?
Yes, I did say that. Yes.
Right. Not the person who's offending, right?
Correct. Although there's also, I think, quite a bit written about people who are offending who also experience dissociation.
Right. And again, up until March 19th, no healthcare provider ever said anything about Carly dissociating, correct?
That's correct.
I believe you talked about some people having adverse, I guess, reactions to SSRIs, stuff like Lexapro, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you said it was maybe only a very small percent, 1 to 2%, right?
Correct. In terms of the suicidal
Right.
Reaction, yes.
Right. And you said suicidal, but not homicidal, correct?
So I don't know what the data is on homicidal. I know that aggression and agitation are known side effects of these medications. They're listed in the package insert, but I don't know what the actual data would show. I'm not sure there is much in the way of data in that regard.
Right. And as it relates to the dissociation, you talked about one of the things, I guess, that typically you see is complete amnesia, right?
That's what people who write about it say, that you tend to see more. I'm sorry, what they say is you tend to see more patchy amnesia rather than complete amnesia in people for whom the dissociation is thought to be legitimate rather than malingering.
Okay. And as far as your theory goes about whether or not Carly was callous or anything whenever she did this, you said you don't believe, in your interactions with her, you don't believe her to be callous, right?
I think not just my interactions with her, but everything I know about her based on all the records and what I've heard from the friends and the family.
Right.
In general, so overall, I do not believe her to be callous.
And that's based off of your 4-hour evaluation and the documents that her defense team gave you, correct?
In my interview with Mr. Smiley.
Mr. Smiley, who's now supporting her, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean supporting her. There are various meanings of that, so I don't want to agree to something I don't really understand.
Okay. Court's indulgent. And obviously, we just talked a lot about different actions that that Carly took after she shot her mom, but before she shot Mr. Smiley. And I asked you whether or not it was your opinion that whether or not she knew right from wrong during that time period, correct?
Correct.
All right, and you stated that your opinion that despite all those actions, you do not believe she appreciated the difference between right and wrong, correct?
Correct.
Is there any type of medical literature or anything that you're relying on to form that opinion?
Well, there is. There's certainly literature on dissociation, literature on violence in dissociation. I believe that in my report I referenced certain articles. That is, bear with me one moment, on page 23 at the bottom of my report.
And in that literature, is it simply talking about dissociation, or what? Is that the article, the one about dissociation that you're talking about?
Yes, the article is called Dissociation, Defining the Concept in Criminal Forensic Psychiatry. So it's talking about dissociation in the context of people who commit crimes, such as murder.
Thank you. And you admitted earlier that some of those actions certainly looked like she knew the difference between right and wrong, right?
Yes.
And you saw the video earlier, and where did you hear her ask about how's my stepdad in the video earlier with Deputy Shack?
I did.
Okay. Why would she ask how her stepdad is if she didn't know that she shot or did anything?
I think reasonable to conclude that she had some idea that she had done something or something had been done that might have imperiled her stepfather. So she clearly knew something at that point.
Right, but she knew something about when she was supposedly blacked out, correct?
Correct. And what I conclude from that is that the blackout was not complete, that there was some level of awareness that she had.
Right. And that's also clear because of all these actions she took to try to cover up her actions, right?
Well, I don't want to presume her motives in doing it, but there's clearly some level of awareness in much of what she was doing, yes.
Right. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect examination.
Dr. Clark, did you come to your conclusions to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
I did.
Thank you. Dr. Clark, during your interview with Carly, who answered your questions?
Carly did.
Okay. And during your evaluation and interviews, who controls that?
I did.
And what would you do if you were having any issues with your evaluation?
I try to change the circumstances because having a accurate or appropriate evaluation is sort of critical to the work I was doing.
And how, based on your experience and expertise, how common is it for people to feel like they're in a surreal state, out-of-body experience when they are discussing traumatic events?
I'd say certainly not uncommon. I think many people that have had traumatic experiences do have the experience of feeling distant from it or feeling somewhat out of body.
Okay. And had you explained the term disassociating to Carly during your evaluation?
No.
And was Carly already on Abilify when you interviewed her?
She was.
How long had she been on Abilify when you interviewed her?
I saw her on August 29th, and she started on Abilify on March 28th, so that would make it 5 months.
And what dosage of Abilify was Carly on when you interviewed her?
I believe she was on 10 milligrams a day.
Okay. And do you recall how long she'd been on 10 milligrams a day by the time you interviewed her?
I believe her dose was increased from 7.5 milligrams to 10 milligrams in, I think, either June or July.
And did your conversation with BG change the opinion that you came to in your report?
No.
And you spoke with him after you produced your report?
Yes.
And did you hear SK testify this morning regarding her text messages to Carly?
Yes.
Did you hear SK this morning reading out her text messages with Carly from
Yeah.
March 19th?
Yes.
Did that change your opinion?
No.
Is it fair to say that if you find yourself suddenly crawling through a drainage ditch, you know something's wrong?
Sustained is deleting.
Okay.
Rephrase.
Dr. Clark, based on your evaluation with Carly, did Carly seem aware of how she got to the drainage ditch?
No.
But that was the first thing she remembered after taking the dogs out.
Yes.
Did Carly seem to know that it wasn't right for her to be there?
Yes.
And Dr. Clark, if Dr. Clark, if a child knows that law enforcement is looking for them, what is the logical conclusion they are likely to come to?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, let me rephrase. It's a bad question. If a law enforcement officer, has a child and is taking a child into custody and arresting that child, is it a logical conclusion for that child to come to that they're in trouble for something?
Yes.
And would it be logical for the child to come to that conclusion even if they didn't know what they did?
Objection, Your Honor, deleted.
Sustained is deleting.
And would a child, or let me see this, and do you believe that a child who is being arrested, well, never mind, let's go. And during your evaluation and your review of records, do you recall reviewing some counseling records of Kevin Gregg's?
Yes.
And do you
Well,
recall?
I apologize. I recall reviewing a record from the psychiatrist,
Right.
Dr. Hardy, for Kevin Gregg.
Yes, and that's what I meant by medical record. And based on your review of that record, do you recall the medication Thorazine?
Yes.
And who had been prescribed that?
So Mr. Gregg had been prescribed, I believe I saw 3 medications listed: Thorazine, Risperdal, and Zyprexa.
Let's start with Thorazine. What kind of medication is Thorazine?
Thorazine is an antipsychotic medication and sometimes called a first-generation antipsychotic. It's an older medication.
Okay. And what was the second medication you said you observed?
Risperdal.
And what type of medication is Risperdal?
Risperdal is also an antipsychotic medication and is considered as a second-generation antipsychotic.
Okay. And what is the third medication that Mr. Gregg had been prescribed?
Zyprexa was the third medication, also a second-generation antipsychotic.
And did you also observe in those records that Mr. Gregg had been hospitalized?
Yes.
And based on the medical records that you reviewed, from Precise Medical Records and Ms. Kirk's medical records, were those medical records received were they produced in response to subpoenas directly to the various medical providers?
I believe they all were, yes.
Okay. So it wasn't something that I drafted up or something that Mr. Camp drafted up and sent to you, correct?
To the best of my recollection, all of those documents came with subpoenas.
Okay. And did I hear you correctly when you said it was a nurse practitioner at Precise Medical Clinic that prescribed Carly her medication?
I believe that Ms. Lerber is in fact a nurse practitioner.
Okay,
I believe.
not a psychiatrist.
Not a psychiatrist.
Dr. Clark, does a person always know if they've lost time?
No.
Dr. Clark, can a person know they've lost time if they have no memory of it?
Objection, Your Honor. I think it's outside the schedule. Cross.
Coral overrule it. It was touched on about her alleged disassociation. I'll allow him to answer the question.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes. Can a person always know that they've lost time if they have no memory of it?
No. I think some people are aware that something has happened, and some people aren't very aware at all.
Okay. And when you reviewed Rebecca Kirk's records, did you see information in there regarding that Ashley Smiley had also spoken with Ms. Kirk?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And and based on your evaluation of Carly, was Carly afraid that her mother would find out that she was having these mental health issues?
Yes.
Is it reasonable that Carly would not want to disclose that she was having these mental health issues to someone she knew was talking to her mom?
Yes.
Earlier in your testimony, you talked about how Carly was a follower. And if someone has more of a follower personality, are they likely to argue with law enforcement?
Objection, Your Honor. Outside the scope.
Your Honor, he brought it up on cross. Why wouldn't she have argued?
Overrule.
You can answer.
I'm not sure being a follower makes much difference in that regard. I would imagine that for a 14-year-old who's being arrested or picked up by the police, they're not likely to argue. I see Carly as a pleaser. Perhaps that's more germane. I think it's unlikely Carly would have actually argued. That's not something that would be characteristic of her.
And do you recall your testimony earlier today when you were talking about dissociative disorders and acute dissociative reactions to stressful events, how you testified that Carly met most of the risk factors?
Yes, I believe I talked about the factors that would make it seem more likely that it was the real deal as opposed to malingering.
And I believe you testified, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the only factor that Carly didn't really meet was that she didn't seem to have any recollection of it instead of spotty recollection, correct?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Deleting.
Sustained is deleting.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that if Carly's nightmares of gunshots were somehow her memories of that incident, then that would fit even more perfectly with your diagnosis, that the risk factors?
Overruled.
You can answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't say perfectly. I wouldn't use that word. The other thing I'd say, I wouldn't put too much stock in this whole thing. This is information that we have from the research that there is. It's not great research. So again, I wouldn't put too much stock in it. But yes, the fact that she would seem to have some awareness of what had gone on, some post-traumatic symptoms associated with it would make her amnesia a little more patchy.
Okay, and so having that patchy memory would fall in line with someone who is genuinely experiencing dissociative amnesia.
Yes, again, this is not proof. This is not proof that she experienced dissociative amnesia, but it would be a factor, weighing in that direction.
Okay. And Dr. Clark, when we saw the body camera footage today, when Carly and Deputy Shack arrived back at Carly's house, were there already law enforcement videos and an ambulance there?
I actually couldn't see the video itself from where I was sitting, so I'm not sure.
Okay. And you know, if that is what the video portrayed, you know, would it be, how likely would it be, or would it be logical for someone to believe something has happened?
I think it would be very logical for someone to think that something had happened, yes.
Okay. Begging the court's indulgence. No further questions, Your Honor. We tender the witness.
All right, you may stand down. Defense may call its next witness.